Welcome to the October the 1st, 2002 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie. As we bring you the history of our city and some of the things that have made that history and some of the people that are continuing to make history this very day. And that is the case today. We are honored to have two very special gentlemen that are elders of the Burbank Gardens Church of Christ. And the Burbank Gardens Church is celebrating their 50th anniversary on, I believe, October the 6th. And we're just so excited to have these two special gentlemen with us. And I'll introduce you to them. And then I will read a resolution or a proclamation that has been presented by the city of Grand Prairie and the council. And we're just so pleased, first of all, to introduce a very special friend of mine, and that is Mr. Vernon Jackson. Mr. Vernon Jackson and I have been married 58 years and about 10 days. And Mr. Jackson, I want to welcome you to the set, young man.
Thank you.
Glad
to be here.
I'm glad to have you on the set today. And we know because of macular degeneration that you kind of peep around the corner and look out of the corner of your eyes like you're flirting with me. So it's really hard to know when you're flirting with me or whether it's your eyesight. But I want to thank you so much for being here with us today, young man.
Thank you.
Yes. And another very special friend, Mr. Randall Hill. Brother Randall Hill, we're just so pleased to have you on the set today because I believe you are the longest reigning member at Burbanks in the eldership that we've ever had, and also very important to us. So we're very pleased to have you with us today. And I'm sad that Margaret, your wife, is not feeling well today and couldn't be with us because we had hoped to have this a foursome. But under the circumstances, with your permission, both of you gentlemen, I would like to read the proclamation that is going to be presented at the church building on October the 6th. It also, if everything holds together, I plan to read it in the late hours of the council meeting this evening when the council meets, and we will not have anyone to accept it, but we will read it for your permission. And the proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the Burbank Gardens Church of Christ has seen 50 years of continuous service to people throughout the city of Grand Prairie, and whereas the Burbank Gardens Church of Christ has ministered over time to a total membership of some 2,000 people, and whereas the Grand Prairie Burbank Gardens Church of Christ has helped to establish and to strengthen several additional congregations of the Church of Christ across the Grand Prairie and Arlington cities, and whereas the Burbank Gardens Church of Christ will be celebrating its 50th anniversary and reunion on October the 6th, 2002, now therefore I, Charles England, Mayor of the City of Grand Prairie, in honor of their 50th anniversary, do hereby proclaim today Burbank Gardens Church of Christ Day. Witness my hand and seal of the City of Grand Prairie on this first day of October 2002, and it's signed by our Honorable Mayor, Charles England, and by the Mayor Pro Tem, Ruthie Jackson. And we're just so pleased that we're going to be able to present this to you all at that October the 6th meeting. And we would like to thank Brother Jim Harris, who is the minister at Burbank, for writing this proclamation for us and doing all of the research that is necessary. When you celebrate 50 years, there are some of us that in our old age, we may forget some of the wonderful things that happened. And so since you are the, I would say, the longevity person, Brother Randall Hill, would you like to start our discussion and tell us a little bit about your view of some of the exciting things that have happened at Burbank and maybe how it got started?
Okay, we had the property down on Northeast 27th and Reinhardt. We had several blocks down there. There was nothing on there at the time. And in 1950 rolled around, and we did go down and put a tent there because of the church that was meeting at 4th and Church Street at the time. And we put up a tent and finally got about 27 people to attend that meeting in the tent. And from that came our congregation that we've had for the last 50 years.
Oh, that is wonderful. And Brother Randall, where did you live at the time all of this was happening when the church began there?
Okay, I was down on Hensley Drive, but I'd been called back into service on account of the Korean War, and I was in Grand Prairie because of that, and I was out at Hensley Field whenever we started this congregation down there on, and Hensley Drive is not far from 27th Street, so since we lived in that part of town, we had 4 children. We was asked if we would go down and help begin that, and so we left 4th and Church and Norman Gibson there and went down to that area of town to the church.
Because
building.
you lived in the territory, didn't you?
Yes, we lived in the
Would you name your wife and your 4 children, please?
Okay, Margaret is my wife's name, and then we had 4 children. One was John, he was the oldest. We had Jim, and then we had Randa, our daughter, and then we had Ronnie, our 4th child.
All right, and all of those went through what schools?
They went to Fannin, all went
Okay.
through Fannin, then they went through Jefferson, and then they went through Grand Prairie High School.
So you have 4 Gophers, don't you?
Right.
Oh, that is wonderful. And Randall, what happened when, did the tent stay there very long?
Well, the tent didn't stay there too long. We built the preacher's home first, and it went up pretty quick, and after the preacher's house was built, we utilized that. And then Fannin School let us go across the street and use their building for a while longer. And then we went to our homes every Wednesday night. All of our services was held in our homes. And we could get out in the yard, or there's too many for the home. We'd get out in the yard and we'd have all our service on Wednesday night in homes. And then the Union Hall became available to us, and we was asked to come up there and meet Sundays in the Union Hall there on Main Street, or Highway 80 then, it's 180 I think. And so we used the Union Hall until we got the classrooms built where we could meet in the classrooms for the whole service. We had classrooms and we had our auditorium. Then we started building on the auditorium, and that came about while we was all in the classrooms.
Now, who was your first minister?
Okay, we have a program we're going to hand out. Norman Gibson preached the first sermons there in the tent.
All right.
And then we had Holland, Boring, Gladys.
Senior, Holland Boring Senior.
Yeah, senior, and then his wife Gladys. Then we had Holland Jr., which is one of his sons, and Don Boring. So they had 2 boys, and they moved in the house, and we started full-time service there. Probably the latter part of 50, but the building itself was more in 52 before we ever could get into a building.
Get into the building.
We took $25,000 to build that, and now maybe it's worth,
A little bit
whoever
more.
gave the $25,000, we're worth, maybe the property is worth a lot more than that now.
Yeah.
Besides the church being there for the 2,000 people that you mentioned.
You mentioned that we were across the street from Fannin School.
Right.
And you mentioned Northeast 27th. Actually, where is the building located now?
It's Northeast 27th and
Reinhardt.
Reinhardt.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. We want everybody to clue in and know this wonderful little area that we're talking about.
And when Fannin burned, the school burned,
Yes.
we opened our church building up to the school people until they could get something going with Fannin. So the building has been used in a lot of ways.
Lots of different ways. All right, Mr. Jackson, you're next. When did you come on the scene? You weren't there for the raising of the tent, or were you?
Well, you and I were members at church in 4th Street, the church that actually began this work. when it started, and I was part of the committee that located the
Property?
At that time it was 5 acres of mesquite trees. And a fellow named Bill Barnett, who is deceased now, but he was one of the main people on that committee that was looking for the property. And you and I was interested in the property, but we hadn't decided that we were going to leave Church and 4th Street because we had some good friends there. And but we did meet in the tent with them several times, and I just want to mention that the Bowen family that was been mentioned was one of the first preachers there. His family was great music people, and music people in the Church of Christ means great singers. So I remember at the service there, the Bowen family sung several songs for us, and that's one of my memories. It goes back to 1950.
Okay, and then after that, did you go to church with the when it was up in Grand Prairie at the bowling alley or wherever it was?
It was a while it met the
Union Hall?
Yeah, the Union Hall, and we met there with them and enjoyed it. And finally, we looked at each other one day and said, "We live in this community down here. Let's go to that church." So the best I remember, we started going down there about within a year after it started. And we did help build the church building. Back then, the members built the building, and we poured the mortar and laid the bricks, and it was a kind of a togetherness thing.
All right. You mentioned that you and I went to church there. Did you have any kids to go with you?
Yeah, we had Xana, who was then Jackson, and Georgia Jackson, and 2 daughters, and both of those our children were baptized at Burbank Garden. Xana first, of course, she was the oldest. Her name is Xana Jackson Young now, and Georgia was baptized when she was 8 years old, and her name is Georgia Jackson Clemson now. Okay. And both of them are Grand Prairie Gophers, and both of them plan to be at the service, them and their families, this Sunday, and I believe we've mentioned that's the 6th.
Yes, October the 6th, yes. Mm-hmm. All right. Brother Randall?
Hey, let me just mention that building again. When we first started down there, all those members came out with picks and shovels, and we dug all of the foundation trenches that had to be dug on that building, and probably a lot of the community helped us, but we dug them all, and I want to say that since that building was put up, we haven't found a crack one in all of the walls that we put up. And remember, we dug the foundation.
Yes, yes, that's wonderful. All right, Brother Randall, after all of this has gone on all of this time, could you mention some of the, I would guess, say, spin-off congregations that have come about since Burbank would inspire somebody and they would move maybe to another town or to Arlington or?
Okay, we did. We had Freetown. We first had went to Arlington in, now let me think the congregation there, but
Hillcrest.
Okay, Hillcrest in Arlington. We sent our minister and 25 people over there, and they started that congregation.
All right.
And then we started Freetown. We had the property for Freetown, and we set up a congregation in Freetown.
All right, how about the little school across from Lee Middle School? What was that?
Central.
That was the Central Church.
And we started the Central congregation.
Stanley Singleton, I
And
believe.
Stanley Singleton went down there.
All right.
And had that. And out of these congregations, at least the one in Arlington started the one on Mayfield Road. So a lot of the people that we sat there went to Mayfield Road, and Mayfield Road was organized by a lot of the people that came from our congregations.
And was there not a Church of Christ that finally moved from Central to a place over on Skyline or Dickey Road, what is now Dickey Road?
Right, they did that. I'm not sure.
Was that the Central congregation that
Yes.
moved into that building?
And they sold the property down there and went over there.
Okay, so y'all have done 6 or 7 different congregations just in the Metroplex that have been a spinoff from the Burbank Gardens
Right.
congregation. Mr. Jackson, would you like to say anything about any of those congregations, how exciting it was, and how sad it was to see some of our best friends leave and go to another place?
Well, I'd like to mention a little bit about Neil Marshall. He was a minister whenever the Hillcrest Church started over in Arlington, and Neil was a tremendous minister, and he's still living today, and I'd just like to mention him for historical purposes, really. He's in Fort Worth, Texas, along with his wife, and he is planning on trying to come to our celebration Sunday, and if he does, he'll be on the program, and we're just looking forward to him. I just want to remember this. I remember 1 year within 2 months of each other, Neil baptized the Arnold family, who had 10 in their family, and he baptized Bowles family, who had 7 or 8 in their family. So anyway, it was a tremendous time, and I asked him the other day, I said, did you baptize those people out in Mountain Creek Lake? He said, yeah. He said, our baptistry wasn't hardly finished, so we just baptized them out in Mountain Creek Lake.
In the lake.
I thought that was interesting.
Yes, and he's the only minister that I've ever known that is a former jockey. And when Lone Star Park comes up, he always likes to go back and pay respects to the jockeys that ride the horses, because he was a jockey at that time. Randall, I would like for you to talk a little bit about one of the most exciting and I guess long-running projects that we've ever had at Burbank, and that was the jail ministry. Would you like to talk about that in Buck Griffin?
Okay, that was kind of exciting to us, and I want to mention one other thing, that we went to Sherman Street, and the Sherman Street people wanted us to help, and we did not really do a lot of the manual work, but we looked after all the note signing that we went on till they could build Sherman Street. So Sherman Street was built not by any finances from us, except we backed it.
Yes.
And when we backed it, they got the money and they built it. And now then they've gone bigger and bigger. But we did have Bud Griffith come, and we had a man, I don't know how much this you're going to tell, but we had one of our young men that went through our congregation down there in Grand Prairie, and he had committed some, after he got to be either a teenager or more, he committed a crime that he was found guilty for, and he went to jail, and he wrote us a letter and saying, you know, I'm a member of the Burbank Garden Church of Christ, and I've been in jail for 3 months, and none of you all have ever come to visit me. And that got started to where we finally decided, well, let's just go see. We'll visit him, we'll give him a Bible and give him some questions where he'll have to refer to the Bible, and probably he won't look at this like we think that he would. And it wasn't but about 5 or 6 days after that we got a letter back from him. He answered all the questions and had 5 or 6 more names by which they wanted the same treatment. And that kept it going till we sometime had 300 correspondence courses going into the jail. And Buck Griffith now has resigned after 25 years from the pulpit, and he's going to be with us Sunday, and now he's full-time into the jail ministry of teaching in jail. I think that's great.
That's wonderful. Now, that's Buck Griffith and Neil Marshall. Are there any other outstanding young preachers that we have had there that does someone you want to read a list of who's going to be with us, Randall?
I do have that.
Good.
And we talked about Holland Bourne was number one, and then we had Neil Marshall, who was number two, and then Stanley Singleton, which is still in town here.
I understand he's very ill.
But he's in the hospital, and he's very ill, and probably will not be able to make our 50th. Then we had Harold Thurman, then we had Ed Mars, and then we had
And he is deceased.
And he's deceased, you're right.
All right.
And Ike Trailer, he's deceased.
Yes.
Buck Griffith, I mentioned, he'll be here. And Marvin Weir, well, he probably will not be here, but he was. Fane Bass is deceased, and he was with us. Troy Singleton has been with us. Scott Crenshaw has been with us. Charles Bazell from the Christian School of Education, and Jason Alton has been our minister. Now we have Jim Harris.
Jim Harris. Okay. Mr. Jackson, are there any of those that you'd like to speak about? I know that I'd like you to say something about Troy Singleton because you keep in touch with him all the time. Where is he?
Troy Singleton is a minister in Austin, Texas at this time. He and his wife, and as you mentioned, we do correspond rather frequently, and he is going to be here. He's just not only a wonderful preacher and a good singer, but he's just a fine person, he and his family, and we really learned to love him when he was here, and I really look forward to seeing him. And I know that it's many people that hopefully are viewing this program right now that are planning to come and be with us this Sunday, because it's going to be a
What time does it start?
great day. It starts at 9 o'clock, and if you ask us when it's going to finish, we really couldn't tell you that exactly, and we will promise that it will probably finish before 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But,
all right, are you going to feed us?
Oh, yes. I believe it's Edelman's going to cater it. Is that,
Yes,
that
under a
is
big
correct?
tent. We're putting a big tent up.
Okay.
And we'll be under the tent. If it don't rain, if it does rain, we'll still be under the tent.
Under the tent and in the building.
in the house, yeah.
And in the building.
And I'd like to mention one incident that over the 50-year period, we remember a lot of things that happened. I just want to mention a brother in Grand Prairie that's named Ray Groves, and he and his wife Faye, they were members at Burbank in the early days, and back then we had so many people in there that I couldn't keep up with who was members and who wasn't, and one of our either traditions or biblical ideas or beliefs is that a person needs to be a member of the church before he waited on the table or served at the communion table. So I go by one morning and I say, Ray, would you like to wait at the table? He looked at me and he said, Vernon, I'm not a member of the church, but says, I will be next Sunday. Ask me next Sunday. So I just, that's always on my heart and on my mind. And I remember Ray Groves and, of course, his nice, wonderful wife, Faye. And just wanted to mention those two people.
And Jackie and Harold Lennard,
Yeah.
and Olene and Larry Raybeck, some of the old-time people that were down in Burbank Gardens when we first came down there in 1947. And Brother Randall, anything else that you think that we ought to remember for Sunday?
Well, Brother Lackey, B.A. Lackey's one that was really put in charge of our building program, and we're going to have a little dedication to him, even though he's been gone for some times. But when he left down there, he said, okay, I'm finished. I'm through with the building. I just want to see it stand at least for 50 years, and I'd like to see the singing and the gospel preached every Sunday. And if it can, then my work here would be very successful. So we're going to let him know, yes, we've been there 50 years, and we're still singing.
Well, we had Bible school with many, many hundreds of boys and girls from down in that area, so we touched lots of lives.
One Sunday we had 405 on a special Sunday. Probably was the most we've ever had, but that was kind of special. But we did have them the 200 and 300s regularly.
Mr. Jackson?
I want to mention the Farah family. Jack Farah was also very instrumental in building those additional classrooms on our building in the 50s and 60s. And
He had a marvelous voice.
Jack was our praise leader. We called him song leader at that time. Of course, as time marches on, I believe we call them praise leaders now. And I'll never forget that Jack was such a stickler for teaching music and us singing songs right that one time he just stopped us when we were singing and he says, I just want to tell y'all that bird's eye in that music, that means pause and watch the song leader. So anyway, it was some interesting times. And
Florine was his marvelous wife. She's still living.
Yeah.
Yes, and the Farah family has been very important to Christianity here in the city of Grand Prairie, Texas. Brother Randall, am I forgetting anything, young man?
No, I just, I think not. We've covered a lot of things we're going to cover again.
Well, in other
Sunday.
words, why don't you look out into your camera right here and invite everyone and give them the time, the date, and the place, and a real good exhortation. Would you do that, Brother Randall?
Oh, yes, I'd love to do that because we're preparing for maybe 250 people or more that would come. So you're welcome to come. We are going to feed around 11:30 or 12, and then we're going to go back and have history pictures. We have a lot of pictures of us when we were 50 years younger, and we're going to flash them on the screen, and we'll be looking at those. And if those people are still available, we want them to stand. We want to recognize them, that they're still there. So if you've ever been there, or you want to come see what you do when you have a 50-year reunion, I never had one, so whatever we do will be the first time I ever done it, probably the first time Vernon ever, or Ruthie. So just come and see what happens, and we hope you did enjoy knowing the Lord has been there for at least 50 years.
And your last word, Mr. Jackson, half a minute.
Yeah, I want to take a special privilege and mention the Jackson family, all of my sisters, Gwen Seymour and her family, Louise Vance and her family, and Mary Hickerson and her family. We're all members at Burbank Garden at this time, and all of our relatives on your side, or almost all of the
All
relatives.
of my sisters.
In fact, we were referred to as the Jackson clan.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. We're going to have to wrap this up. Lewis is winding me down with the Jackson clan. You gentlemen are precious. Thank you all for coming today. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do. And thank you, gentlemen, very much for being here today.
Thank you.